Ótimo.
Oh, just off. I got you. I'm gonna use it first, right?
Are we going to use?
We should have got him a headset.
Alô, alô.
I want to give him a headset.
Is it recording? Oh, meu Deus. Oh, my goodness. Well, let me introduce myself first. My name is Vanessa, those of you who do not know me, and I teach first and second year Portuguese, okay? And it is my pleasure to introduce you to the director of the Office of National Scholarships and Fellowships, Andrew Seidler.
Hello.
And Dr. Michael Handelsman, he is the Senior Faculty Director of the office, okay? So thank you so much for accepting my invitation to talk to our students. We are very glad that you're here. And I would like to thank all of you for being here. You know, an educational institution is nothing without students. So we only exist because of you. And it is, I think, our duty to show you some doors. And you're here because of your excellence in your academic excellence. But I want more from you. I want you to fall in love with Brazil. I want you to fall in love with Portuguese. I want you to fall in love with Brazilian culture and, you know, maybe minor in Portuguese. And we want you to become ambassadors to the US in Brazil or in other parts of the world where Portuguese is spoken. So thank you for being the wonderful students you are. Thank you for representing UT so well. Thanks for being part of the Portuguese program, okay? So thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. So all of you are studying Portuguese, I assume. Okay. So why are you studying Portuguese?
I just really like the language, I guess.
You know, what is it that you like about it?
I think it sounds really beautiful, and I was also really interested in American culture.
Oh, so you like the sounds of the language? That's good. How about yourself?
Same thing.
You like the music? Okay. How about you?
Well, the reason I chose Portuguese is because I wanted to studying abroad Brazil.
Oh,
Yes, so that's the reason I chose Portuguese, but eventually, like, I fell in love with the language and just the culture.
okay, great. Anyone else? Anything different? Other motivations? Yeah.
I actually discovered a Brazilian dance form in the U.S. called Brazilian Zouk, and I just fell in love with it. I've danced it the last 2 years, and through that I've met different Brazilians, and I've become acquainted with the language, and so I'm taking my first Portuguese class right now.
Great.
Portuguese for speakers of another Romance language because I already speak Spanish. So I've really fallen in love with the language, and I'm actually going to study abroad in Brazil next semester.
Nice. Where are you going to go?
I'm going to go to Rio.
Oh.
PUC.
And to coincide with Carnival. Yeah, okay.
That's just a little bonus.
Right, okay. I think you had your hand
I was
raised?
going to say because Vanessa's the best.
Oh.
teacher.
Okay, well, that's a good reason. Well, I think what Andrew and I want to do today is kind of talk to you a little bit about what it means to study a language, and then what the Office of National Scholarships and Fellowships can do to enhance that experience. Now, I'm a language teacher, a professor of Spanish, and I've been studying Spanish for more than 50 years. So it's a long time. I've also studied Portuguese, and I've studied a little bit of French and Latin. I want to begin with an anecdote, okay? And then we can briefly talk about what that anecdote might mean, and that will help us, I think, put into context the bigger message that I want to share with you in terms of what one is doing when one is studying another language, okay? How does language mean as opposed to what it means, okay? So, and this is a true story. When I was a graduate student at the University of Florida, at that time, University of Florida had lots of Brazilian exchange students. And a neighbor of mine was from Rio Grande do Sul. And he had an old Chevy, and he used to drive me to class. And it was, I think, January or February, and it was cold. Now, cold in Gainesville, it's not Minneapolis, right? Okay, but it was cold, and his car was a real lemon, to put it that way. And so we get in the car, and he turns on the ignition, nothing happens. Does it once, twice, and he's getting a little frustrated, and he says to me, "Darn." Again, nothing. Darn. And this guy was a mild-mannered guy, and I noticed for the first time, it was kind of irritation. He was getting really irritated. And he went from darn and another turn of this key and a damn. And he said damn 2 or 3 times, and then finally looked at me and said, "Miguel, disculpe. Puta!" And they turned the key and the car started. Yeah, it's a true story. What do you think that means? What do you think? Why was the damn and the darn, it just didn't do it? Now, I'm not talking about actually turning the car on, but I mean in terms of his emotions. And it wasn't until he said that word in Portuguese that he could just kind of breathe easy. We're not leaving until someone says, no. Well, okay, basically, I like to think language is very deep. It's not just, here are 500 phrases, now go to Rio and have a good time. And you can do that. Or, if you have the money, buy Rosetta Stone and learn Chinese in 2 weeks. That's what they say. The point is, what we do at a university, we have higher expectations. You're studying a language which is more than just acquiring a skill. Okay, if you want a skill, which is fine, then you do the Rosetta Stone or you go to some language academy and acquire the skill. But what we're trying to do is to help you feel, understand, and express yourselves in a language other than English or whatever, if you have a different native language. But expressing yourself deeply, that's magical. Just think about it in your native language. One day you wake up and you speak this language. Where did it come from? And as we speak our native language, we're not thinking, translating, figuring out what's feminine, masculine. It just comes out. Isn't that amazing? I mean, think about it. It just comes out. I'm talking to you. I'm not even, I don't know. These words, I was like, I have no control over them. They're coming out. What a marvelous gift. And so my friend, when he had to say puta in his native language, it was more than just an expression. It was something that just came from the insides that resonated with him, right? Now, we want to help you understand that when you begin to learn another language and you begin to study another grammar, another vocabulary, right, that in the long term, potentially, will not become a mere dictionary exercise, but it will help you appreciate and understand your native language more deeply. Because you know how difficult it is to learn a language, and then when you realize the magic about speaking your own language, which seems to come effortlessly, then you have a greater appreciation of this gift that we have. And that gift requires on our part respect, responsibility. We should never be careless with our language, or language in general. Language defines us. Okay? But language just doesn't exist out in the air. We make language. And when I say we make language, right, then we're getting closer to one of the missions and objectives of a university. Not for you to get vocational training so you can get a job. We hope you all are employed and enjoy what you do. But that's not our mission. Well, it's true that a lot of the promotional and public relations things you hear and read about universities would suggest that, oh, come to university, economically it's better, you'll make a higher salary, But most of us in the university, that's not what we're about. We're trying to deal with your taking responsibility for creating yourselves. And language is a way we do it. Now, not everyone is going to acquire advanced level or near native level language skills in a second language, but just going through the exercise of disciplining yourself to begin to think through a different vocabulary and through a different series of rules opens your mind to the very fact that language at some very fundamental level is arbitrary. In English we say this is a chair. Well, we could call this paradise. Whoever started language could have arbitrarily said, oh, here's paradise. And after we die, we're going to a chair. And we would have learned that, and it would have been the most natural thing. Okay? So in effect, what I'm saying is that when you study that other language and learn that in Spanish, this is silla, oh, so it doesn't have to be chair? Or if there is a certain rhythm or a certain rhyming scheme in one language as opposed to the other, you have potentially a tool in which you can rethink how you use your own language to make it more meaningful, right, and to make it work for you even more effectively. And that's an exciting proposition. And I repeat, you're not going to get that after one semester with Vanessa. She's the greatest thing since sliced bread, but she doesn't perform miracles. Okay? No, seriously, it takes a long time. Okay? But it's there for you. It makes you more sensitive to your own use of language. And hopefully, you understand that language is how we imagine, how we define ourselves, how we express ourselves. Right? Always recognizing that miscommunication happens all the time. How we say something and how it's received, well, we don't have any control over the one who's listening. Right? And that puts a bigger responsibility on our shoulders to make sure that what we say, we make sure we know the nuances so that our speech will even be more effective. Now, what does all that have to do with the Office of National Scholarships and Fellowships? Well, with the Office of National Scholarships and Fellowships, we don't have money to simply dole out and say, oh, you want to go wherever? No, we don't do that. What we help you do is compete for competitive scholarships, which will require you to think deeply about who you are. There's always a personal statement, usually one page, and you're supposed to describe in one page who you are. It's not your resume. We already have that. Okay? And you have to figure out what your hook is, where your story is, in order for you to communicate who you are. And if you're 20, 21, 22, whatever it is, well, you're not going to put 22 years of life on a one page, obviously. So how are you going to think deeply about who you are and what you want to say about yourself to demonstrate your special qualities and your uniqueness? And when I say special qualities and uniqueness, I'm not saying that you have to demonstrate that you're better than your classmate. It's not a question of being better than someone else. It's a question about you being the best that you can be. Whatever that might mean. Okay? I happen to believe as a language teacher that studying a language deeply gives us insight into that whole process of making meaning where most people only see a skill. Putting together a personal statement, well, there's a skill involved, but it goes far beyond that. Right? It is also you taking responsibility for representing yourself. And how you do that, there's no one formula. There's no app. You've got to just sit down, reflect, and come to terms with who is the person that you are creating. And Andrew and I, among others, we will read drafts of that one-page statement. And we will react. Sometimes we may say, this is such a generic statement that it doesn't resonate. Because you can't say, oh, I'm so-and-so, I go to UT, and I'm from Tennessee, and I'm majoring in X, and I have a GPA of Y, and I'm real intelligent, and I'm responsible. Well, yawn, yawn, yawn. Right? Everyone is going to say the same thing. But what is it that inspires you? And it could be a million different kinds of things. Some of you said, oh, you're studying Portuguese because you enjoy the way it sounds. Well, that might be your hook. What is it about the sounds of Portuguese as opposed to the sounds of something else, including English, that just speak to you? I don't know. You have to think about it. Right? Or you talked about dance. Well, there are all kinds of dances. Why is it that dance in particular something that is so meaningful to you? Or it may be a relationship you have with a grandparent or a parent or a friend, an experience. There's no end to the possibilities, but you have to give it a lot of thought. And it's not something you do on a weekend. It's an ongoing process because our personal statement always changes. Because we all evolve. Right? It's not, oh, I did that 6 years ago, here it is. Well, circumstances change, maybe that personal statement has to be revisited. So it's a living document. Right? For most people don't want to deal with it. Because it's too demanding, it's too hard. And those who go through it and do it, they have now a document, a sense of who they are, and you're going to use that, whether it's applying for a scholarship, or a job, or going to graduate school or professional school, whatever, or an internship, doesn't matter. Because at the end of the day, someone's going to say to you, who are you? Recognizing that whatever it is that you're applying for, I have 150 people standing out in that hallway who have your credentials, and they want the same job you want. Why should I choose you and not those 150? It's kind of a daunting task. I have to believe that studying Portuguese contributes to your ability to discern what makes you special, where your passions are. Studying Spanish for me in particular certainly happened. Just made me so much more aware of my own passions, interests, values. Seeing myself through another language, another grammar, understanding that the Spanish is always within me, even though I'm not a native speaker of Spanish. So it's not an issue of, okay, here's the dictionary, this word means this word, I close the dictionary, and now I'm back to English. No, it doesn't work that way. Right? You allow yourself to be touched, affected by that other language. And that language, as you are experiencing already, is not just words, it's emotions, it's culture, it's traditions, it's an appreciation for the way other people live. And ideally, we get to the point where we recognize that we all, despite our differences, we all are part of the same history, but we live that history differently. And it's through those differences that we have to find our commonalities. Which is not to say we live in utopia and we're going to sit in a circle and sing songs together and hold hands. No, there's always conflict. But if we understand how to live with our diversity, we can find consensus and we can respect our differences, albeit at moments of some significant tension. But if there's mutual respect and understanding, we can get through the tension. Okay, so we know we live in a world today, particularly in our own country, very polarized. We cannot, unfortunately, get a grip on the differences. Everyone has a different group, and everyone is pointing fingers at the other group, saying that it's the other group that's inferior, problematic, whatever. Not understanding that we cannot solve problems. We cannot be fully completed as individuals without the help of the community. I have to believe that studying another language is one way of experiencing that multiplicity. Because even though Portuguese is not your native language, language is what brings us together. Right? A sensitivity to why that person, my friend, had to use that particular word to just release the stress is not unrelated to moments when I need that particular word, whatever the word might be, to relieve whatever stress I might have. So words help us think beyond the surface and to think beyond the mere mechanics of saying, I now have a useful skill. Okay? So, that said, as a kind of an introduction, Andrew will speak to you about some of the specific kinds of opportunities that this general series of comments are hoping to show you will coalesce and become much more vibrant and much more real when you put into practice through the exercises that these different scholarships require. Okay? So that's it.
So I feel very professional because I have this lapel mic. It just feels kind. I would like next time I want a headset like Madonna or something like that or whatever. That's just a thought. So what are all of you studying other than Portuguese? Some volunteers here. Biochemistry, mathematics, neuroscience, social work, supply chain management.
Psychology and
Okay. And I'm guessing there's some others out there. Or what year are all of you? First years? Oh, welcome. Second? Third? Fourth? Cool. Oh, good. I like this. So what we will, I'll hand out some information to sort of help contextualize what exactly we're talking about, because it seems a little abstract. So what are these scholarships, and what is a nationally competitive scholarship as opposed to, say, the Hope Scholarship? But before that, what I want to say is you'll hear us talk about a process often, and this process, it's not quite a supply chain kind of process. It's not. I don't know if it's quite that, but I don't know. I think we're working on that. But the process really starts with a first contact, and this is it. So it's been set up for you, and that's a fantastic thing, because sometimes it's not always easy to find students who would be really good candidates for these sorts of awards that I'm going to talk about. So this is really nice to have a targeted group who that's been identified as having a lot of talent and interest in pursuing language and other things. So the process starts with we'll talk about what we do and the different opportunities that are available to you as students, and then invariably it will lead to one-on-one, with Dr. Handelsman, with me, with others, where we'll get to know you a little better, and I think that you'll get to know yourself a little better. We'll ask questions. The process, though, itself of applying for awards and sort of thinking about what does make me special, which we don't really think of that often, that process will really help you hone in on both what you could apply for and also becoming more competitive over time. If you're a first-year student, second, third, fourth, if you've hung around for a fifth, no, all good. There are opportunities that you are eligible for right now as we're sitting in this room. So after we'll start to meet, and increasingly it will go from, who are you, what are you about, just sort of getting to know you. We'll get more and more focused on particular awards that you might want to apply for. And the good thing is that many of the scholarships and fellowships that we deal with foreign language ability, skill, but also command of a language and passion for it are crucial. And I've sort of pulled out a couple that I think would be, in particular for students who are studying Portuguese, would be a good one to look at. So what I'm going to do quickly is hand out this. This is the thing I'm always the slowest at. It's just sort of handing things out. So there's 4 there. And just take maybe a minute or two, just looking at that, the first page. You can save the second one. Let's see. 2, 4. Here's what I'm going to do. Would you mind passing that back there? You're welcome. De nada. So as those are going around, so just take a minute or two and just look at the first page, and maybe the first page, the back side of the first page. You can just sort of read over and maybe see what stands out, because given that we have a diverse set of majors, different things are going to maybe resonate more with others of you. I'll give you one more minute. There's not a test, though. Okay, so one of the things Dr. Handelsman didn't mention is that your likelihood of winning one of these awards is not that high, which is sort of like, that was not a great sales pitch I just made. But I say it to every group. This is not about you. This is just what a nationally competitive award means. It means that you are competing with students from all across the country. Now, the good news is University of Tennessee students win these awards routinely. Students like you, regular people, no superpowers, but students who looked at this, looked at themselves, did an assessment, thought about what they care about, and then were strategic. And strategy does matter. You know, the way you spend your time, whether you're a first, second, third, fourth year student, the way you spend your time is important, and those things will matter, and will sort of, you have opportunities in your personal statement and other things to really bring all of your skills and also sort of your values and what you're all about to bear in these competitions. So what you have on this first page, these are not the only scholarships and fellowships that we deal with, but they're probably the ones that most commonly students apply for. For some of these, they require university endorsement, where you have to work with us. Some of them don't. But either way, what we like to do is, as we sort of identify opportunities, you'll look at this, you'll set up an appointment with me or with Dr. Handelsman to talk about some of your interests. As we identify things, we will work with you. We will review drafts of personal statements. We will tell you when something is not where it could be. all in the spirit of helping you not only become more competitive, but also get more out of this process. I cannot guarantee an outcome for you in terms of what will happen. Will you win the award? But I think we can guarantee that you will have a good experience with us in the sense that you will be pushed to think more deeply about who you are, what you're doing, and why you're doing it, instead of just oh, I like this. You know, I do it because. There has to be more than that. So I'm going to sort of leave the first page alone because this is just sort of a general one. And for those of you in the sciences, something like the Goldwater Scholarship or the National Science Foundation's Graduate Research Fellowship might be a great award to look at. For those of you interested in the environment, you should look at the Udall Scholarship, and on and on. So there are scholarships out there and fellowships for really any level of interest. But I want to focus on these, on this second page here, so 3 and 4. But these are really targeted for students who are pursuing foreign language, and I tried to pick out some particular ones that I think would be good for students who are pursuing Portuguese. So has anyone ever heard of the Boren Scholarship? All right, good. Well, now you have. So next time someone asks you, I hope you'll say, oh, yes, of course. That annoying guy with the lapel mic said something about it. So the Boren Scholarship is a study abroad scholarship. It awards up to $20,000 for study abroad. What they are looking for is students who are pursuing study abroad in what they call non-traditional study abroad locations, which basically just means not Western Europe, not Canada, not Australia, not New Zealand. So Brazil, absolutely. And then there's a specialty program in Mozambique to pursue Portuguese as well. But basically what they're looking for is students who are going to study language and culture while they are studying abroad, although you can do other things, but that has to be the focus of your study abroad. And if you are studying the Portuguese language, you need to go and study abroad, right? Who's thinking about studying abroad who hasn't yet but is thinking about it? All right, so the Boren would be a really good award to consider applying for, especially if you're looking to essentially not go to Portugal to study. And I'm not trying to dissuade anyone from going to Portugal to study Portuguese, but certainly to go to Brazil or to, again, there's a specialty program there in Mozambique. Yes? So the Boren is not a program, and so some of I'm glad you asked that. So the way these scholarships and fellowships work, some of them are you are applying for something, and if you get it, you are doing the thing that program sponsors. In the case of the Boren, you are applying to get funding to do what you want to do, so to study abroad. They are looking for students you have to study abroad for at least a semester, and ideally 2 semesters or a summer and a semester in order to be as competitive as possible. So they're looking for students who are going to study abroad for a long period of time in one of the world regions I talked about and are going to do intensive language study. So if that's something you're interested in, you'll note I put in some of the deadlines, but that's something where it's not, even if you're not thinking about studying abroad for another year or 2, now is really the time to start having conversations with us about what you're interested in so we can help you. Maybe you're not competitive for it today, but you can. Most students aren't competitive, in their first and second year for everything, but you can work toward that. The second one I'm going to mention here, Dr. Ellison said we don't give out money, which is generally true, except in 2 instances we do, and it's the better part of the job, right? Giving out money. So the SIT ONSF Partner Award, SIT, the School for International Training, is a study abroad provider, and a very good one, a very well-regarded one that focuses on community engagement, strong language training, research experiences, but it's a very community-based sort of approach to study abroad. You're not just going to go on a vacation, although I think you would have a very good experience there. And the reason we have partnered with them to create this scholarship is because it's one that sort of checks a lot of the boxes of the sorts of things that scholarship providers down the road look for, organizations like Fulbright, which I'll talk about. So the SIT ONSF Partner Award, we can award up to $4,000, and the University of Tennessee adds another $1,000 to that for all SIT students. to study abroad on one of their programs. I noted a couple of their programs here that are in Brazil, but certainly there are others out there, but that would definitely be something that if you are looking to study abroad, I would encourage you to look at the SIT ONSF Partner Award. The Critical Language Scholarship Program does not include Portuguese, okay? But I'm going to talk about it just very briefly. Is that okay? Can I do that? Okay. So that is not to dissuade you from pursuing Portuguese. This is just an opportunity to spend a summer fully funded to study another language. And it seems to me that students that take their language studies seriously increasingly pursue multiple languages. And those are summer intensive language boot camps, essentially, in country. So studying Arabic in Jordan or Oman, studying Hindi in India, and so forth. Anyone interested in government, working in the government, out of curiosity? Yeah? What would you mind saying a little bit about what you're interested in?
Well, I mean, I'm an economics major, so I can see myself doing analysis for the government.
Anyone else? Yeah.
I guess technically NASA is a government.
I think so.
So
Last I checked, yeah, I think it's still, yeah, great. So a lot of, I bring that up in part because a lot of scholarships are in fact funded by the government and create opportunities for those who might want to pursue opportunities to work within the government, which is obviously extensive. I mentioned the Rangel and Pickering fellowships. Those are fellowships for those who might want to work in the U.S. Foreign Service, and they are looking for students who have strong language abilities outside of English. I hope all of your English is strong. But that funds graduate school for students who want to pursue a career in the Foreign Service. So Princeton Latin America, Princeton Africa, this is a one-year fellowship program that you can apply for you spend it working for an NGO, again, in Latin America or in Africa. You do not have to be a Princeton University student. It just happened to be started at Princeton many years ago. If you want to pursue something like that, working for an NGO for a year in Latin America, you need to have strong language skills. So I'm not suggesting you should study Portuguese to a high level in order to do Princeton Latin America, but what I am suggesting is that if you look at some of these things as goals that you want to reach, whether or not you get it, if you have studied Portuguese to the point that you could be competitive for an opportunity like that, that's a win. That's a fantastic thing. So I do hope that many of you will, I mean, you obviously have an ability in the language, will pursue it beyond just the 1 or 2 years that you have to do, but pursue a minor. You do create a lot more opportunities for yourself. The ONSF Exploration Grant is another one where we do get to give away money, so that's fun. The Exploration Grant, I sometimes describe it as an academic business trip. What it is if you want to spend a year post-graduation doing some sort of fellowship, maybe it's doing research through the Fulbright program, maybe it's pursuing graduate study in another country, the ONSF Exploration Grant is something where you apply through us to spend 3, 4, maybe 5 weeks, typically abroad, in the country where you want to pursue a fellowship, want to pursue a scholarship. And you're not doing research, you're not doing study, you're there to make connections with people with whom you could work. And there are not many universities that sponsor a grant like this, and so we're really excited to be able to provide this. And this is something, again, that you would apply through us for. In order to be competitive for it, I'm going to save that for a second here. The last thing I'm going to talk about here is in terms of sort of concrete opportunities is the Fulbright. The Fulbright is the one that we work with the most, is by far the largest fellowship program out there. The Fulbright does around 2,000 grants per year. And we had this past year 52 students apply, the year prior in the 40s, and we expect that to continue going up. And students who are pursuing a foreign language, I mean, the Fulbright was built for you. I mean, that's what it's there for students who are going to be able to go into another country and be an effective cultural ambassador. That's what the Fulbright is there to do, to bring young Americans into another country and through their scholarship, through their teaching, to be ambassadors for the United States in the 21st century. The Fulbright provides 3 primary opportunities for 1-year grants. 1, teaching English as an English teaching assistant, and that could be at the elementary school level, high school level, and even at the college level. Doing independent research projects with a faculty member or in an NGO, or pursuing a graduate degree. So, and the Fulbright operates in more than 140 countries. Brazil happens to have one of the largest Fulbright programs in the world. So they are very actively pursuing young Americans to come to Brazil to do one of those 3 things that I just mentioned. And having at least, I want to say, 2+ years of Portuguese is what you need to be competitive. But the more, the more the better. So if you go over to the second page, I have this sort of ONSF timeline, steps to consider at the bottom, under the little orange dots here. If you do all these things, you'll have a successful life, okay? Done. I'm going to leave now. No one does necessarily all these things, and they don't necessarily do it in this exact order, but these are the sorts of things you want to be thinking about if you want to be competitive for these sorts of fellowships. And you might say, well, I don't know that I want to be competitive. If you're competitive for a Fulbright, you're competitive for many, many things. For careers, for graduate school, internships, and I would say that you have made the most of your university education. So the first thing, attend an info session. You're doing that right now, so you can check that one off. All right. Do you have a pen? You can check it off. All right, cool. Preparing a resume or CV, some of you have that, some of you don't, but that's something that you should have. It is a good way to kind of keep track of what you're doing and how you're spending your time, but that is not all you are. Developing relationships with faculty. So when you have to apply for things, you are going to have recommendations. And that is one of the most frustrating things when you see a student who's really talented and it's their senior year and then they don't really know faculty. They haven't gotten to know them, and I think they've maybe sat back and waited for someone to come find them and say, hey, you're talented, let's talk. Typically it doesn't work that way, so you have to go out and find them. But building those faculty relationships is crucial to getting really good letters of recommendation, but also just the mentoring that's available to you through that. I'm not going to read all of these things, but the sorts of things that typically make students competitive for fellowships: research experiences, intensive foreign language study, experiential learning, service, getting involved in your community right here, study, internship abroad. Those are the sorts of things that they're looking for, not just having a 3.9 GPA. Grades are absolutely important, but that unto itself does not get you a fellowship. And so the experience of working with the Office of National Scholarships and Fellowships, what I find is that students typically expand their ideas about what they can and can't do. And that's why I do this. I do not do this because I want to be an awards machine where we say, all right, cool, we got this number of Fulbrights and we got this number of critical language scholars, although we celebrate that, absolutely. But what we really celebrate, we enjoy getting to know students, talking with them, getting to know what you're all about, and then trying to find targeted opportunities that you can apply to, and be competitive for. And again, we have too many students at the university who opt out of these sorts of things. Maybe hear a presentation like this, or they've just heard of the word Fulbright and say, well, that's another student. Well, if everyone said that, no one would apply, but people do apply and people do win. So I would want you to imagine yourself as someone who can and should be applying for these sorts of awards, and it starts just, again, with a conversation. So what stood out in here? Any in particular that look appealing you want to dive into? But not all at once. Maybe you'll raise your hand. Goldwater. Okay, well we should talk about that. What year are you?
I'm just a freshman.
Yeah, you're not just a freshman. You're a freshman. Yeah. Yeah. Well, good. Cool. Others?
Just about the special program in Mozambique you said.
Mm-hmm.
Just that sounded interesting.
Yeah. So
What is it?
and that's one where eventually you are going to have to spend a little bit of time on the website, and you're going to have a conversation. You get to have a conversation with us. That sounds like punishment. Have a conversation with us, and the questions you typically have, we can usually answer them very quickly. It's not nearly so complicated as it seems. But yeah, great. Others?
I think like graduate program scholarships sound pretty good.
Yeah. Where would you want to do a graduate program abroad? Where? Cool. Others? Well, I'm going to just mention a resource we have back here, and then I think Dr. Halsman will sort of fill in some blanks here. The personal statement. So I say that, and some people just get excited. I like writing. I have a writing background, and so I enjoy that. And then for other students, it's terrifying. It will be a part of your life. Writing about yourself in a sort of thoughtful way will be a part of what you do as a college student and beyond, and we are here to help you with that. Here are just some sort of ideas about how you want to approach it. There is no, I think you heard before, there's no example. We don't put them on our website. Oh, yeah, I'll that one won, so I'll copy that. It's not a personal statement anymore. It's someone else's. So, but we work with students routinely on that. It's probably one of the very favorite things that I do in my job is sort of helping students, get out of that GPA and this is what I do and these are my hobbies, and really get at who you are and what you're all about. I think that's both of us really enjoy doing that. So I'm gonna be quiet for a moment here.
So why are you studying Portuguese? Oh, okay. Why are you studying Portuguese? Okay. Why are you studying Portuguese? Okay. The hope is that after listening to the two of us, you understand that when someone asks you why you're studying Portuguese, you need to get beyond the surface. Right. And you want to say something, obviously you have to believe it, but you want to say something that is a little bit more profound, such as, it's humbling. Well, what does that mean? How is studying another language humbling? Now, if you don't believe that, then you don't say it. But what I'm trying to indicate is it's really important for you to take advantage of your education so that you can get beneath the surface. And just think of all the things that Andrew described. Every one of these opportunities is a way for you to take ownership of the meaning of your education and how you're going to make it work for you. And studying Portuguese, just think, because you're studying Portuguese, you've just learned that you have all of these opportunities open to you. Now, what you do with those opportunities and how you craft them, well, that's part of the personal statement, because that really requires you to figure out, how am I going to connect the dots? So as a faculty member, the times I have to attend graduation, and I watch the students, all of you one day, will cross that stage in Thompson Bowling, and you will be given a piece of paper. It's blank, because you can't get the diploma until you actually pay all your fees. But at least symbolically you get this diploma. So as a faculty member, I'm sitting there, and as each person crosses the stage and takes that piece of paper, I always ask myself, did that student get a degree or did that student get an education? And there is a huge difference. I can guarantee you, well, some exceptions, but if you just want a degree, it's pretty easy. Show up and keep up. You'll get a degree. You will pass 120 hours. You'll get a major with 30 hours. You'll do your gen eds, and you'll get that piece of paper. And a lot of people are fine with that. But getting an education is all about you creating yourself. Critical thinking, going beyond the surface, having an understanding of what it means to be the best that you can be. An analogy to that, or analogous to that, is studying Portuguese. Do you want a tool? Okay. Here's your 500 phrases. You got it. Or do you want that language to be a vehicle which will enable you to think more deeply, not only about Brazil and Portuguese-speaking people, but about yourself? Because at the end of the day, right, education is about learning who we are and where we fit. Okay? And there's, in my mind, no better way, I'm not saying it's the only way, but there's no better way of probing and finding yourself, no, I don't want to say finding yourself, creating yourself than going through the process of thinking through another language. So, in effect, ONSF facilitates that. It facilitates sitting down with you so you take ownership of your education. Because when you apply to these different scholarships, you have to figure out, so all of these classes that I've been taking, how do they make sense? Or am I simply taking 120 hours, 42 of which have to be upper division or whatever those numbers are? Well, that's kind of a real mechanical kind of thing. But the meaning, if that's important to you, if you want an education and not just a diploma, check us out. Okay, any questions or comments? You've listened to us too long, I'm sure, but you've just been...
So shy.
No, I thought they were so impressed that they was just...
In awe.
Wow,
Thinking about the possibilities.
I've seen the light. There's nothing else. Huh?
So what would be like some of the first steps that we would take to start applying for
Sure. So the question was first steps. So this was the first step, right? The second step, I would say, go to our website, and it's listed on there, and there are descriptions of all of these awards and more. We also link to the various scholarship foundations so you can see a little more about what it is. Not because there's going to be a test when you meet with us, but I think it's just helpful so you have a sense as to, sometimes students show up in our office and they say, I want to talk with you. I'm not sure about what. That's fine. I don't mind that. That doesn't bother me. But I just think if I were you, I would want to know. So, go on our website and then just email onsf@utk.edu and set up an appointment and we'll talk with you. And in my experience, and I can be shy in some of these settings, so I get it. But typically, we usually get a lot of students who follow up after these because something clicked for them and maybe they weren't saying something right now. But yeah, just follow up with us and then we go from there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and, Andrew said earlier that the vast majority of people who apply will not receive an award. So you may say, why am I have a lot of things to do and I don't need to be wasting my time. But sincerely, of all the students who have gone through this process with us, most of whom did not receive the award that they were applying for, but every single student has been so appreciative of having gone through the process, and the vast majority do get that internship or get into law school or a graduate school or a job. In other words, you apply to these scholarships, that application has multiple functions. And it's not a question of just cutting and pasting, but you've already done the heavy lifting. And every other application that you have to turn in at some form or fashion, you've got to do that personal statement. You have to know how to project who you are. You have to have a plan, right? To define exactly what your path is going to be. So you're doing it, right? And you're doing it with people who are guiding you. There's no grade. This is the coolest thing about ONSF, right? In other words, in every class you take, right, you basically have to jump through the hoops that the instructor puts out there, right? So if you're studying Portuguese, Vanessa, who I love dearly, she is saying to you, if you want to get a certain grade in this class, you will do A, B, C, D, and I'm going to grade, she's going to grade you, right? However, with ONSF, you design the course, and you don't get a grade. You just get a conversation of people who are interested about you. That is so cool, right? Because you are driving your education. So it's a wonderful opportunity, because there are very few instances in the university, not just at UT in general, where you can go to a place and not have to worry about someone else's game plan. It's your game plan. And you have people who are helping you, right, develop that plan and put it into practice. That's a pretty good deal. And you're already paying for it, believe it or not. It's in your tuition. Right? We don't get anything extra, so you might as well take advantage of it. If the worst thing that can happen is that you're just going to have a pleasant conversation with Andrew.
It's pretty good.
That's a pretty good deal, right?
How many of you go to football games? This is going to be a lot more satisfying than going to a UT football
believe it.
game. All right.
And Andrew doesn't make $4 million. Okay, so no, seriously, as he said earlier, and he, I just echo what he said. We genuinely are passionate about what we do because we're passionate about you, and we're passionate about you because you are cool people. No, seriously, I don't know any of you really, but as we get into a conversation, we are always just stunned by how impressive you are. And oftentimes, you yourselves don't know why you're impressive. And it's the most mundane things that come out of the conversation that just blow us out of our chairs. In other words, well, I'm about 4-0 and I've done this and that. Okay, well, that doesn't impress us really. But when that person says, yeah, I enjoy sewing. What? And then together, we hear you craft why that's meaningful for you. It's a form of self-expression. Or it's something I do with other people and I have a bonding. Well, just yesterday we were doing a mock interview with a student, and it had nothing to do with what this person was applying for. And somehow, in his comments, her comments actually, she said, yeah, I find fashion to be empowering. What? Now let's talk about that. And then all of a sudden this person begins to reveal some really interesting things, right? So you might say, well, that sounds kind of trivial. Well, sometimes it's the most trivial things on the surface that are the most meaningful. And in closing, let me just give you one last example, okay, of how this specialness, right, if to use that word, can just be so surprising. We had a student a number of years ago applying for a Fulbright, wanted to go to Manchester to study in the UK, pre-med, interested in public health. And he was telling me about public health, and he's got to help communities, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, okay, hold it. So let's put aside the public health and your commitment to doing what's good for the community, et cetera. What are you passionate about? I mean, what do you really enjoy? And he thought for a moment. He said, well, fly fishing. And I said, well, whoa. I said, what do you mean by that? He said, well, when I was a young boy, my grandfather would take me out to the lake and we'd go fly fishing. And during those moments, we just spent hours talking, and my grandfather would tell me about the family and about the past and about his experiences. And to this day, my grandfather is my hero. I said, well, God, you have to put that in your Fulbright application. And he didn't, which is okay. It's his application. But when he applied to med school, he put it in. Okay, because he had to have a personal statement. Well, he went to, I can't remember, it was East Tennessee State or the University of Tennessee Medical Center in Memphis. But he has this interview. And there were some, I think he told me 8 or 9 surgeons who were interviewing the applicants. And wouldn't you know, one of the surgeons was an avid fisherman. And according to the student, they spent the entire 20-minute interview talking about fly fishing. And he was accepted. Now, I can't tell you that he was accepted because of the fly fishing, but think about it. The panel, they knew what he got on his MCATs. They knew what he got in organic chemistry. They had the transcript, but they're trying to build a community, a cohort of students, and they want to know who these students are. And he was able to talk so impressively about fly fishing that it gave him a keener sense of his sense of humanity. And it was great that just coincidentally there was a surgeon there who was a fly fisherman, right? So it's amazing how some of those things which you would think are just, well, private, not important, right, just come out, and all of a sudden it gives you that hook. And that is in some ways the magic that ONSF does. We didn't create the story, but we created the conditions for that student to mention the story, and then we reacted by saying, whoa, that's interesting, and to coax that person to develop it. And you all have stories. Okay? The cool thing about getting older is the older you get, the more stories you have. And that's a problem because you're already over an hour and I could talk for a long time. Anyway, so good luck and come see us and continue studying Portuguese. Even though, well, I won't say, I was going to say something about Spanish, but I won't. Because Vanessa's here.
Well, thank you, everyone.
Yes, once they have the chance to meet with you guys, they will talk more. They're just being shy. Maybe because I'm here. Maybe like the mother is around.
Well, you have to give some thought to